Aloha, I am Christy Chadwick. I have a master's in deaf education from Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. During my program, I learned alongside audiologists to learn more about the science of the ear and also how devices work, such as hearing aids and cochlear implants. With this, I learned a method called listening and spoken language, or LSL. Now living in Hawaii, I run an organization called Hawaii Hears. My mission is to deliver services to families who have children diagnosed with hearing loss, who use hearing aids and cochlear implants. I also provide education and awareness to professionals in early intervention around language development for children who are deaf or hard of hearing. The main focus of Hawaii Hears is to provide support to families, to empower them and help them get what they need to be able to communicate with their child. In this series, we hear from audiologists, teachers of the deaf, parents of children who are deaf, and individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. If you want to learn more about my services or what Hawaii Hears offers, please visit hawaiihears.com. You can also donate by clicking the donate button at hawaiihears.com. Mahalo. Aloha. In today's interview, we talked to David. David is profoundly deaf and he uses cochlear implants or CIs. And today you'll learn a little bit about his journey towards using cochlear implants, when he lost his hearing, how that happened, what that was like for him, and also how he became a self-advocate for learning more about the implant process and what it's like to listen using cochlear implants. You can find David today on YouTube. He has a channel that's called David B Cluff. That's his name, Cluff. And he has a YouTube series all about his journey and his life utilizing his cochlear implants. We also talk about technology and how he listens with a device in all different scenarios and situations. So enjoy, and please feel free to leave a comment or questions below. All right. Hello, David. Thank you so much for being here to talk with me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, Christy.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your journey. You are profoundly deaf and you use cochlear implants right now. Can you take me back to when it happened and how you found out you were deaf?
Yeah, so I was born with the virus called CMV virus, cytomegalovirus. And at the time, doctors did not know what that meant for me personally. And we started noticing signs of hearing loss at age 3. And we didn't know how much it was going to take or how far it was going to go. And it wasn't until I was about 6 years old that I woke up one morning and any hearing I had the night before was completely gone. So it just was wiped off. And so that was kind of the journey of how that came about. And then 6 months after that, I qualified for a cochlear implant, and that's kind of where that journey started.
Okay. So what was that like going from having your hearing, and I know you were younger, so you were still in that age of learning language, and then all of a sudden your hearing was going, so the language you were using of spoken language was no longer available to you. What was that like?
I remember being frustrated because when I started losing my hearing, my family and I started learning sign language, more so my parents and I. And I had an uncle that was deaf, and he also knew sign language, and so I had him to talk to. But for the most part, everybody else that I was familiar with and comfortable with did not know sign language. And so being able to express what I was needing or wanting to talk with them was really hard and frustrating. And that 6-month period of not being able to hear, but being able to sign to my parents was a huge help during that time. I also, at that time, I was in first grade for kindergarten. and I had gotten a ASL interpreter to go with me through all my classes and to be with me from before I got the implant to after to help with that transition. So that communication really helped in that aspect. But I remember just feeling like, I don't know, how do I communicate with my best friends and my cousins and family? So to have my parents to be able to do that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's very important to have the access to language. And yeah, I hear your boys in the background there. You have two kids?
Yes, I actually have three. So I have two boys. Lucas, who's almost 4, and I have Henry, who's 2, and then we have a baby girl, Aaliyah. She will be turning 6 months in a few weeks.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah, congrats. And how is it communicating with them?
Communicating with them, they've known me as hearing their whole life, but they also know at night that I can't hear. And so they're learning to know a few basic signs. They also, we had an experience a few nights ago actually where I was taking my son up to his bed and I had already taken my ears off at this time. And I thought he was supposed to go to sleep like he normally does, but he woke up frantically crying and needing something, and I couldn't hear him. And when you have a crying 3-year-old and their tears are coming, it's hard to read their lips. And so I had my phone on me at the time. I said, "Hey, Lucas, can you ask Siri what you want?" So I have an iPhone, so I said, "Ask Siri." And so he asked Siri what he wanted, and I was able to read what he was saying, and that's how I knew what he wanted. So using technology to that advantage helps. But communicating with my kids, they just know me as hearing every day, and then again at night, I just don't hear after going to bed.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Way to use technology. That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the kids, they don't sign with you. Do they want to learn sign?
They learned a few basic signs when they were little. We try to incorporate a lot as much as we can, but with 3 kids running around, it's kind of hard to really set time to really actually practice. And with our oldest, he's used to like immediate answers, and so to try to teach him sign language by only signing, it was a bit more frustrating on both parts. And so we just take it as it comes, and we introduce signs when they're ready, and then they ask us sometimes what signs are, and so we'll just go from there. But as far as 100% communication, about 95% is just spoken language in the home, and then we have a little bit of time where we do sign.
Okay. All right. I'm wondering a little bit about your process of utilizing language. You said that you had an interpreter at school for that first year or two as you were transitioning from no CI to having a CI. What happened after you got your first CI when you were 6?
Okay. So after I got my first CI, we were actually living in Utah at the time. And shortly after getting the implant, about 6 months after that, we moved to St. Louis, Missouri. And so we had this big move. And so obviously I couldn't take my interpreter with me everywhere. And so when we got to St. Louis, we experimented with having a special aid teacher with me, but didn't know sign language. And so I was already kind of getting really good at hearing at the time. And so we figured we'd get that a try. And after about a few months of that, we realized I was starting to kind of delay in some of my classes. And so we transitioned to a smaller classroom in a different school that specialized with deaf kids and hard of hearing kids. And so there's only like maybe 7 students. And so in this classroom setting, I had a teacher that knew sign language and a special ed teacher also knew sign language. And so it was more oral based, but they did use sign at times when they felt like it was needed. And so that was really beneficial. Did that for 2 years. And then I transferred back into a more mainstream setting for school and had special ed teachers and some more guidance counselors. And so we did that for about 2 years. And by the time I was in fifth grade, I had said I wanted to be homeschooled. And so my mother was actually a school teacher. And so she was able to just pick up, and we started homeschooling me. And then my siblings kind of followed after that. Uh, but that's kind of the transition of my elementary to high school. That's what we ended up doing.
Okay, great. What took you to St. Louis? Did you go there specifically for your education, or was there something else?
It was for my dad's job. He got a job offer out in St. Louis.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because there are so many outlets for people who are deaf in St. Louis. There's a great audiologists in the medical facilities, and then teachers and the special school district. And
yeah, that was actually a huge surprise to us, because when my father got the job, we were literally supposed to like move within like 2 weeks of him finding about this job. And so we moved out here, had no idea that there was a huge deaf community and that there's all these resources. We thought we would have to fly back to Utah for all my appointments. And to be able to come here and to see all those resources was a huge blessing to our family.
Yeah, definitely. And you're still in St. Louis?
Yes, we're just about an hour outside of St. Louis now.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's where I attended school, was in at WashU in St. Louis.
Oh, awesome. We were just there for my cochlear implant upgrades. So
great. Yes. Tell me about your upgrades. So you just got these new ones.
Yeah, so I upgraded. So there's two different systems that I have. So I got obviously my first implant when I was 6. And so the internal device is a lot older than the newer ones. And so my second implant, I got at age 14. And so the internals are completely different technology standards. And so my right ear was using so much power to be able to operate and to produce the sounds that I need every day. And I was going through about 5 to 7 batteries a day, changing them anywhere between 3 to 4 hours a day. And so there was a lot of things that were happening. And then my left ear, I would literally just put it on and it'll last 20 hours. And so when this upgrade came out, it was, one, because they wanted to introduce better technology, and two, they wanted to give access to wireless devices that are now coming out that I could connect to. And so the right ear actually has a body processor, which is this little guy, and it just snaps to my belt loop, and then a wire goes up under my shirt and then it connects to my headpiece. And my left ear, so that's called the Chorus device for advanced bionics. And then I have the Naida, which is just a behind the ear processor. And it has a more improved battery and T-Mic system, which is a microphone. And so I got those upgrades on Thursday, and I'm on day 3 of adjusting to everything. My left ear is taking a lot more adjustment than I had thought, but as far as everything else, it's going pretty smoothly.
Okay. And by adjustment, do you mean the sound quality? What do you mean by this adjustment? What does that mean?
So the adjustment for me personally is my left ear has a more smarter microphone system, which means it is going to start learning to pick up things that are maybe like if I'm talking to you in person, it's going to pick up your voice. And if someone comes walking behind me, it might want to pick up their voice. And so it's learning to have a more smarter setting for microphones. That is taking some getting used to, because sometimes it feels like it's changing programs, but it's just an adjustment of how the microphones are working. And also the sound quality has improved, which is a lot richer than I'm used to, which is actually a really good thing for me. And so that's just getting some used to, and the balance of how things are working together. It's just another adjustment. That's kind of where I'm at. Usually when we do a whole new program, it takes me 3 days to adjust and to make it feel like it's my new normal. If I were to go back to an old program that I thought was my favorite of all time, it would sound completely different and I would hate it. So it's just adjustments, and it becomes my new normal, and we move on.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like that when I get a new prescription for my eyeglasses. So if I
have like a slight change, or I get a astigmatism happening, and then they refocus everything, I look at the world a little bit different, and it takes me a few days to adjust. Is it similar to that?
Yes, I actually wear contacts, so I have
Okay.
that same exact experience all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you'd say it's kind of similar to like
Yeah.
the eyeglasses to listening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And your sometimes sounds will sound a little different. Um, and so I remember when I was 6 and I got my first implant, I came home flicking every light switch that I can possibly flick because I thought they sounded really weird. And I never knew what the dishwasher sounded like at the time. I couldn't remember. And so I would like listen and like, Mom, what is that sound? I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
And so I would find myself just exploring sound and figuring out what goes with what and making connections to sounds and the item that it's coming from.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that, because it tends to be that when um, people who don't know anything about hearing loss, they put the devices on and they say, "Oh, everything's fine. They can hear now." But really, you have to relearn what sound is. You have to learn what a knocking is, and
Mm-hmm.
what a voice is, and whose voice it is,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
inflections, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
know exactly what the speech inflections mean, if they're asking a question or if they're
Mm-hmm.
making a statement sometimes. So,
Yes, exactly.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to note. I want to talk about what you're doing now. I mean, professionally, you're a photographer, and then you also have sort of this outreach that you're doing for cochlear implants and deaf teens. And so
Mm-hmm.
tell me a little bit about your mission and your life right now.
So right now, professionally, like you said, I'm a photographer, and I also manage a team of 3D artists for a furniture company where we're in charge and we create images of all of our products that go on site and to retailers. And so we get to pretty much color all day of what we picture these products to be in, whether it can be a nightstand to a dresser to coffee tables. So we get to have fun creating images to help show where it could be in your home. So that's a fun thing that I get to do every day. And then on the side, I love helping people understand what it is like to be deaf and the different experiences that I have with the cochlear implant. And what does that mean to me? Because you can ask any other person that may have a similar system or setup as I do, but they experience life differently than I do. And so providing my own experience and my own perspective might help somebody else that might have a similar experience that they're trying to figure out. And so when I was 16 years old, I was working on my Eagle Scout project for the Boy Scouts of America at the time, and I was working closely with my neurologist on a project for research, and we were talking about what kind of project could I do for this Eagle Scout project. And he mentioned, why not build a website for deaf teens? And so I started spinning this idea of, okay, let's build this website. And so we built this website, and I was able to connect with so many other teens that had cochlear implants or hearing loss that I never really knew about. I often felt like I was the only one. And so to make this connection, work on this website was a true eye opener for me. And since then, the website has moved on and it's no longer existing, but I was able to take that experience and create my own website that shares my story, and which evolved into creating a YouTube channel, and also a platform on Instagram and Facebook where I can kind of really share more intimate experiences of what it is like to be me and to hear with the cochlear implant.
Awesome. Yeah. So right now there's no website, but tell me where to find you on YouTube then, or is there
So
a website?
yeah, so on YouTube you can find me at David B Cluff. It, you can search that. You can find me online at www.davidbcluff.com. You can also find me on Instagram. All my handles are the same, David B Cluff. And so that's kind of where I share my story and share a little bit snippets of how I am as a father to my 3 kids and what life is like in that aspect. Um, And one thing that my wife and I have learned is when we're out and about, and sometimes because I don't hear perfectly, we've learned to have more patience for each other and how we perceive what is being said. There'll be times where she'll be sitting in the car next to me and say something, and I'll be like, "What? What? You really said that?" And I'll repeat it, and she said, "Oh no, I didn't say that." And we'll repeat ourselves and realize that we're not perfect, and that to have that communication and understanding that either of us are not perfect, and my hearing is by far from perfect. So um, that's just something that we've learned, and we move on with that.
Yeah, learning new ways to communicate and with what you have to operate from. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
kudos. Thanks for your outreach and helping to give this perspective to others who are deaf and who may be thinking about a CI or who may be new to using CIs. And it's important to communicate that with others and help even the hearing people understand what it's like to have cochlear implants too. How is it walking around outside on the streets? Do people ask you anything? Do they stop you? Do they look at you? Do they wonder what you're wearing?
When I was younger, that was very common. Like I would go to Walmart, for example, and we'll be in the checkout line, and you see people putting stuff on the belt, and they like look at your head, and they look down, and they look up, and they look down, and they don't want to say anything. But most of the time, I was just like, "Hey, yeah, this is what I wear. This is how I hear." And so whenever I do get asked, I often will just talk about it and share the points that they want to know about. Or I'll point them to my website where they can learn more about my story. And yeah, and there's like a few people, it happens every now and then that I'll get stopped and asked. And some people wonder if it was a Bluetooth device and that's how I connect my phone. And it's so much more than that. And it's interesting to see their understanding grow after being able to talk with them about it.
Mm-hmm. So you learned to be a self-advocate at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that?
I honestly think a lot of it started when I was working to get my second ear, my second implant. I often call them my ears. So
That's okay.
when I got my second implant, I had to do a lot of research because I was 14 at the time and I was old enough to really know what was happening. Because I didn't really know very much of what was happening when I was 6, but I took this opportunity to really understand what does the surgery entail, what appointments do I need, and really understand the whole process. And by doing that, I gained more confidence in asking questions to my audiologist and my other doctors to figure out what everything means. And by doing that, I became more confident. And my audiologist at the time realized that they needed a support group for the program there, for the teens and kids that have cochlear implants and for families. And so I ended up starting up a support group at the hospital dedicated to the cochlear implant teens and hard of hearing. And so we created this group, and then another mother created a group for the parents. And so we worked together to really help advocate and give resources by doing a Q&A panel. You would bring people in to talk about the devices or their experiences. We would go bowling with all the teens to get them out and to realize that they're not alone, because a lot of these teens come from all over the place and they felt like they were the only ones, but in reality there were so many more. And so we brought them all together to create a support group, and through all that experience I really gained that confidence to be able to say, yes, this is who I am. I'm not afraid to talk about what it is I for me and how things work. Or sometimes I don't hear very well and things kind of go a little sideways than I wanted it to. And so that really kind of brought out a new side of me.
Very cool. Yeah. When you go through the process of audiology and you have to, turn on your devices and go through the programming, what's it like to do that?
I've gotten used to it for so long that I made it a game, and I enjoy the process. This recent Thursday, so 3 days ago, is when I got reprogrammed with everything, and so it's very fresh on my mind right now. But one thing I have learned to love is to love the process of how things work. That it takes time, and my reprogramming session for both years took 3 hours. And so rather than just being impatient and feeling like, oh, I just want to get it done and be over with, I really took the time to understand why things were being done and realize that to hear takes time and a perfection to a point. And so to be able to like sit there, and even though she's gonna turn me off and then turn me back on, I anticipate that, and I enjoy hearing the difference between, okay, this is what it sounds like. Do you like one better than two, or two better than one? I really enjoyed that process, and then to realize that the final is not completely final, because I can always go back and have them change things later. But yeah, it used to be weird at first to have them constantly turn me on and off, or to freak out that things sound really weird at that time, but it's just a process of evolvement.
Yeah, because when they turn you off, you have zero sound, right? You are profoundly deaf.
Mm-hmm.
Can't hear yourself.
No.
You can't hear others.
Yeah, so we get by with like a few basic sign language that will pass while I'm off, and then we'll turn them on. We'll try to talk as loud as we can to make sure everything's sounding good, and then we'll turn them off again.
Yeah, make all those really loud sounds so you want to make sure that it doesn't hurt you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, see how loud is too loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, how often do you have to go to the audiologist?
Typically it's every year for just to make sure that everything's functioning right. If anything changed, the biggest thing I've learned is any big life changes, you definitely want to go back and just make sure everything is okay. I had an experience I did a church mission for 2 years, and it was stressful. Any mission is going to be stressful, any big changes, whether you go to college or anything. And I realized I was getting really stressed. And so with that stress came a feeling of I was hearing differently. Everything was still the same, but I was hearing differently, and things were feeling weird and didn't feel right. And so I ended up going to the audiologist about every 3 months for a little while, just to kind of tweak things and to make sure everything was working okay. Not so much to fix it, but to give me a peace of mind that everything is okay. And so we did that for a little bit, but since then it's usually every year that I'll just go in and make sure everything's looking good. And if something fails, then you go in. I mean, that's pretty typical to once a year.
Okay. And then it takes you a few days to adjust after.
Yeah, I'll have to go back in about 2 to 3 weeks to do some more testing now that I've had them on, just to make sure that the new devices are keeping up to what I'm supposed to be at.
Okay. And I want to talk about the device that you're using right now to listen to me through the computer.
Yeah. So right now, I don't know if you can see this, but this is called the Roger Select by Phonak. Phonak recently, about 2 years ago or so, they partnered with Advanced Bionics on being able to do a system like this. If I take this off, I won't be able to hear you, so I'm going to keep it on. But it's a little round circle, and all around it has microphones. And so you could put it on a table, and I could take it to a restaurant, and it can transmit to me. It's kind of similar to the telecoil system that was around for a while, but this uses a different receiver, and it's built into my processor. So within my processor, there is a receiver, and so I just plug in the aux cord into the headphone jack on my computer, and I'm able to hear everything through the computer that's transmitted to me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so it's sort of taking over for the telecoil. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I didn't quite understand that part yet.
Yeah.
But they said there is a telecoil program that I can use or the Roger system. So there's a special program that goes into the cochlear implant processor that allows us to be connected to any of the Roger systems. And a Roger is owned by Phonak, and so that's where that comes into play.
Okay. Yeah, it must be in that similar family of FM and DMs and telecoil and Bluetooth. I mean, there's like a range of ways that you can enhance the sounds going into your processors, into your internal processor from various elements, whether it's a computer or distance or whatever it is. Yeah.
So I can take like the aux cord and plug it into an FM system. So if I were go to like a movie theater or somewhere that had an FM system, I could plug into that and it would still just transmit through that little device that I just showed.
Ah, very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you use captioning at movies at all if they offer it?
I've never actually had to do them at the movie theater just because, to be honest, I was always uncomfortable asking for captions at movie theaters. And so typically we would just wait for the movies to come out, watch them at home, turn the captions on. That's my way of watching movies. I prefer it that way because I can pause, I can rewind and rewatch it. And then now with this new system, I can actually connect to my TV and be able to listen to the TV and hear it better, I guess. And so, yeah, movies at movie theaters, I've never done the captioning experience like that. We typically go maybe 3 times a year just because I don't like movie theaters that much. So
what do you not like about it?
I could probably enjoy it more if I actually did use the captioning system.
Yeah, that's okay. Is it the sound quality that you're not liking, or is it just the atmosphere in general?
So the sound quality is always pretty good. I don't mind the atmosphere. It's just I've been so used to subtitles and captions that it really helps me understand what's going on. And so usually I can get by on a movie without watching subtitles or without the subtitles, but I always prefer subtitles more just for understanding.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I've been using them too. And when I go to the movie theater, I sort of wonder, where did they go? I can't, I need a little support, even though I have normal hearing, but I appreciate that support for sure.
Yeah, especially in a day and age where you're constantly bombarded on social media with these videos, and now they're all being captioned and have subtitles. And so it's almost becoming a normal thing to see. And so when you're watching a movie or TV and you don't see subtitles, you're like, where did they go? Why are they not there? So
the accessibility is very important.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about out of time, and I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and tell me a little bit about your story and share with us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been great to see other organizations that are reaching out and wanting to educate and to help others. And I am all for that. And I am grateful for those organizations.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And just say your YouTube channel one more time.
My YouTube channel is David B Cluff. You can just search that. I'll be on there. You'll see my profile picture and some videos of me telling my story and also some videos of my family and I. So, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Aloha. Bye.